Life, in its rawest form, is a battle. Every day, we face challenges, obstacles, and emotions that test the limits of our patience. It is easy to feel like the weight of the world is bearing down on us, and in these moments, the instinct to hold on tightly takes over. We grip onto everything, our plans, our desires, our dreams, with the hope that doing so will bring us security, stability, and relief from the pain. But what if the very act of holding on is what causes us to suffer? What if, instead of clinging, we let go? Could this act of release be the key to finding peace and freedom? The idea challenges everything we've been taught about resilience and strength. It forces us to question the nature of suffering itself and what it truly means to be at peace with life's unpredictable journey. Many of us live in constant tension, always striving to control our circumstances. We cling to relationships, jobs, goals, and outcomes as if holding on to them will shield us from the pain of uncertainty. But in doing so, we often create our own suffering. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, argued that our pain does not come from external events, but from our attachment to them. It is not the loss of a job or the end of a relationship that causes distress. It is our attachment to how things should have been, how we expected life to unfold. We suffer when reality doesn't match our desires, when things slip through our fingers and we can't control the outcome. The question is, how much of our pain is self-inflicted? How often do we cling to expectations that only set us up for disappointment? In this struggle to hold on, we end up holding on to nothing but our own suffering. The Stoic principle of the dichotomy of control is simple yet profound. There are things we can control and things we cannot. Our actions, thoughts, and attitudes fall within our control, but everything outside of ourselves, the actions of others, the course of events, the outcomes of our efforts, are not. When we understand this, we begin to see how much of our suffering comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. If we focus only on what we can change, we free ourselves from the unnecessary burden of worry and frustration. This principle does not suggest that we give up or resign ourselves to fate. Rather, it encourages us to act where we have influence and let go where we don't. True freedom, then, comes not from controlling everything around us, but from mastering the art of focusing on what we can control. Our response to life's challenges. Our need for control is an illusion, a belief that if we manage every detail, everything will go according to plan. But life, in its unpredictable beauty, often shows us otherwise. When things don't turn out the way we expect, frustration and disappointment settle in. We become trapped in a cycle of unmet desires, each failed expectation reinforcing the illusion that we can shape everything to our will. Yet when we begin to let go of rigid expectations and surrender to what is, we experience an unexpected peace. It's not about giving up on our dreams or abandoning our efforts. It's about accepting that life will unfold as it does, with or without our approval. Letting go of the need to control outcomes allows us to embrace the present moment, free from the weight of constant striving. So, what happens when we release the need for control? In that space of surrender, we find peace. A peace that comes not from external circumstances, but from within, from the freedom of acceptance. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, taught that detachment from external events and outcomes is a crucial practice for personal peace. He argued that much of our suffering arises from our attachment to things beyond our control, our jobs, relationships, wealth, and even the opinions of others. According to Epictetus, while we cannot control the events that happen to us, we do have full control over our responses to them. By accepting that we cannot change the external world, we liberate ourselves from the constant struggle and pain that arises when we try to do so. Detachment, in this sense, isn't about apathy or disengagement. It's about cultivating a mindset of acceptance. The power lies in recognizing that peace comes not from controlling outcomes, but from mastering how we react to them. So what happens to our mindset when we detach from outcomes? We find ourselves freed from the need to control everything, allowing us to experience a profound inner calm. It's in this freedom that we discover true resilience, a mental and emotional strength that is no longer dependent on the world around us. When we begin to shift our focus from external events to internal responses, something transformative happens. Rather than fighting to control what cannot be controlled, we turn our attention to what lies within our power, our thoughts, emotions, and actions. This shift in perspective nurtures inner peace because it frees us from the turmoil of striving to change things that are beyond our reach. As we practice this mindset, we develop emotional resilience, the ability to face challenges without being swept away by them. Our peace becomes unshaken by external forces because we no longer place our happiness in the hands of others or in the outcomes of circumstances. By recognizing that we hold power over our own reactions, we stop depending on external validation to feel whole. Could this shift in focus be the key to breaking free from suffering? When we no longer anchor our sense of worth or security in what happens outside of us, we unlock the possibility of living with deep, enduring peace. In a world obsessed with external validation, whether it's the approval of family, peers, or the ever-present influence of social media, we often find ourselves attached to the opinions of others. This attachment feeds our insecurities and creates a constant cycle of seeking reassurance. Epictetus, however, urged us to detach from the need for others' approval. By internalizing our sense of worth and focusing on what we can control, our own actions, thoughts, and values, we release the grip that others' opinions have over us. Letting go of this need for approval doesn't mean abandoning connection or disregard for the well-being of others, but it does mean no longer allowing their judgments to define who we are. The real freedom comes when we stop measuring our value based on the external world and start measuring it by our own standards. So what happens when we stop caring about what others think? We reclaim our power, our authenticity, and our peace. Without the constant pull of outside approval, we can live in alignment with our true selves, unburdened by the judgments of the world. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, often reflected on the impermanence of life. In his meditations, he reminds us that change is an inherent part of existence. People come and go, circumstances shift, and nothing remains constant. This acceptance of life's fleeting nature is not a cause for despair, but rather a source of peace. Marcus taught that instead of resisting change, we should embrace it and focus on virtuous action in the present moment. By accepting that everything is temporary, we are freed from the fear of loss or the desire to hold on to what cannot last. This allows us to focus on what truly matters, how we live, how we treat others, and how we navigate each moment with integrity. In a world constantly shifting, where nothing stays the same, how do we find peace? We find it by releasing our attachment to permanence and learning to find comfort in the constant flow of life. By embracing life's impermanence, we unlock the ability to live fully in the present, free from the anxiety of an uncertain future. At first glance, the idea of letting go can seem counterintuitive. We live in a world that values possession and control, where holding on to things, whether it's people, possessions, or outcomes, feels like a way to ensure security and happiness. However, the paradox of letting go is that in releasing our attachment to these things, we find a profound sense of freedom. The Stoic principle of living with open hands teaches us that when we stop clinging, we become more capable of engaging fully in life. By holding our desires lightly, we can experience the world without fear of losing what we've attached ourselves to. This mindset allows us to navigate life's uncertainties with greater peace, as we no longer define our happiness by external circumstances. So, what happens when we let go of the very things we thought we needed? we uncover a deeper sense of freedom and fulfillment, one that comes not from accumulating or controlling, but from the simple act of being fully present, unburdened by expectations. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, often reflected on the transience of life and the folly of clinging to things that are temporary. In his writings, he reminds us that time is the one resource we cannot regain once it's gone. To live in constant attachment to fleeting things, he argues, is to waste our most precious gift, the present moment. By acknowledging that life is inherently short and uncertain, we begin to appreciate each experience for what it is, not as something to possess or control. Seneca's wisdom invites us to embrace the impermanence of life rather than resist it, and in doing so, we gain a deeper appreciation for the moments we have. But how can we enjoy life while accepting its fleeting nature? We do so by shifting our focus from the fear of loss to the beauty of the present, realizing that life's impermanence is not a source of sorrow, but a call to live with intention and gratitude. Attachments, whether to possessions, relationships, or even our own identity, are a natural part of the human experience. Yet according to Stoic philosophy, it is these very attachments that often lead to suffering. When we tie our happiness to anything outside ourselves, we place our peace in the hands of circumstances beyond our control. The more we cling, the more vulnerable we become to disappointment, loss, and anxiety. To experience true freedom, Stoicism teaches us to release unhealthy attachments and focus on cultivating virtue instead. By learning to detach from the outcome of our desires and the need for external validation, we create space for a more grounded sense of self. But what kind of freedom could we experience by letting go of all our attachments? It would be a freedom rooted in inner peace and self-mastery, where our sense of worth is not determined by the fleeting conditions of the world, but by the strength of our character and our ability to live with integrity. Applying Epictetus' wisdom on detachment doesn't require dramatic shifts or grand gestures. Instead, it's about small, consistent changes in how we approach our daily lives. One powerful way to let go of attachments is through mindfulness and meditation. These practices help us observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment, allowing us to become more aware of the things we're clinging to. Another important practice is focusing on what we can control, our actions, thoughts, and responses, and releasing the need to control outcomes. This shift in focus helps us let go of the stress and frustration that come from trying to manipulate things beyond our reach. Additionally, regularly reflecting on the impermanence of life and our own mortality can help us detach from the fleeting nature of external circumstances. These small shifts in mindset may seem subtle at first, but over time, they can have a profound impact on our lives. What happens when we consistently apply these principles? We begin to experience greater emotional control, deeper self-awareness, and a more peaceful existence, free from the weight of unnecessary attachments. Life is, by nature, unpredictable. Every day brings new challenges, unexpected shifts, and moments of change. We might resist this, desperately clinging to stability, but in doing so, we only create more suffering. The Stoic philosophy teaches us that resisting change is a fruitless endeavour. Instead of fighting against the inevitable, Stoicism encourages us to embrace change as a natural part of life. Change, after all, is not something to fear, but something to adapt to. It is through this acceptance of life's unpredictability that we learn to remain calm and resilient, no matter what comes our way. The Stoic mindset helps us focus not on controlling circumstances, but on cultivating the inner flexibility to navigate whatever life presents. So how do we navigate a world that's always changing? By letting go of our attachment to a fixed idea of how things should be, and instead accepting the flow of life, we can move through change with peace, adaptability, and strength. True freedom, as the Stoics teach, doesn't come from controlling outcomes, but from releasing the need for control altogether. The more we fixate on specific outcomes, whether it's success, approval, or a particular goal, the more we place our happiness in external circumstances. Instead, the Stoic way encourages us to focus on the journey itself. Wisdom, courage, and temperance, the core Stoic virtues, are about how we engage with the process, not what the end result is. When we stop obsessing over specific outcomes, we find freedom in the present moment. Every challenge, every small step, and even every failure becomes part of the journey we embrace, not an obstacle to our happiness. What happens when we stop obsessing over results and start embracing the process? We cultivate an enduring peace that isn't shaken by success or failure. We discover a deeper joy that comes from living each moment with purpose and grace, free from the anxiety of outcomes. Epictetus' teachings on letting go of attachments and pain offer us a clear path to peace. He teaches that the key to inner freedom lies not in controlling the world around us, but in accepting what we cannot change and focusing on what we can: our thoughts, our responses, and our actions. True peace doesn't come from grasping for external outcomes, but from releasing the need to control them. When we stop clinging to life's transient nature, we unlock a life of resilience, grounded in the acceptance of change and the cultivation of inner strength. In this way, we are no longer at the mercy of circumstances, but free to live with a profound sense of peace. When we stop clinging to life, we begin to truly live, not as victims of circumstance, but as resilient souls, navigating life with clarity, peace, and purpose.